Skate. Oh, yeah. And then it's right.
No, there's one on the behind you.
I did my study on visuals and student achievement. I got this idea because there's new science standards coming out. We call them NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards. I'm a science teacher, so it's important to me. There's also Common Core state standards, and basically this is a list of things for all teachers in any class that they should be able to have their students do. So that also applies to me. Even though I'm teaching science, the Common Core is for all the different classes. Common Core has a lot about applying knowledge to higher order skills, taking indirect evidence and using it to form personal opinions. The NGSS talks a lot about students practicing, doing some sort of a skill out of with the knowledge that they have. Past assessments that students have been taking, standardized tests, are usually all multiple choice. But the future assessments are now going to change based on these new standards that are coming out. Students are going to have to be using their skills, which is practice-based, to get the answers right, basically. It's a free response. They are going to be required to do things such as doing a chart or a graph, interpreting lab results, developing their own hypothesis, and designing experiments. These are all examples of things that they're going to have to do in the future. There's no multiple choice. So because of those things that are coming into my future as a teacher, I decided what effect does the use of visuals have on student achievement? The reason I chose visuals is because it would cover anything like a picture, a graph, chart, anything like that would be considered visual. So before I started my experiment, I wanted to look up what have people done in the past with visuals. I couldn't really find very many visuals in assessment. There wasn't much research on how do students do when testing with visuals. It's more how are visual aids used in the learning process, and there's some strengths and weaknesses to them. So some methods for visual aids that have been used in the past is language acquisition. So like in Spanish textbooks, French textbooks, there's always a picture with the vocabulary word in the other language. Usually they don't put English next to the vocabulary word, it's a picture instead. And that's the main one that my students even get that one. Math, a lot of math textbooks have the basic number problems, and then later they'll have word problems with a picture next to it. And that's been shown to help students with math. Story comprehension, little kids start out with books with tons of pictures, one sentence, and that's the start of making mental images, which I'll talk about later. Visual aids have shown to actually work with language acquisition. Like I said, for textbooks, there'd be a picture next to the word, and that works. Abstract vocabulary, like the word love. We don't have an actual thing that is love that we can see or take a picture of, but we have hearts, or we have two people hugging with a smiley face. That helps people when they're learning language. Story comprehension, I talked about that earlier. They did a study with students with language impairment, and they scored significantly higher when they were trained to use mental imagery. Everyone else, though, kind of trains themselves indirectly when understanding stories. There were some weaknesses. One teacher was doing some probability, and he decided to use a Venn diagram to help the students understand the concept better. They scored lower than the group who never had the Venn diagram. And I know some teachers that love Venn diagrams. In this case, it did not work. Mental imagery. There's a calculus teacher who tried to do some sort of mental image at the beginning of a unit. Later, when they were moving on in the unit, that imagery was no longer useful, but the students had it stuck in their head. They couldn't get it out of their head. They called this uncontrollable mental imagery because they moved on when it wasn't useful for them. And they scored lower than the group who never had that. And then just in general, as teachers, we all know every student's different. Some of them don't like the visuals. They just want to read it in a paragraph. Or the opposite. They like the visuals. They don't like the paragraphs. If you get a student with an IEP, sometimes the IEP straight out says this is what the students need, graphs and visuals. But not everyone is like that, and it changes over time. So when I decided to do my research, my class, I had 2 bio classes this last school year. 46 students, it's about 50-50, Black and Hispanic. I had 2 classes. One was actually a sheltered class, which means they're all students that spoke Spanish originally, and they don't speak English well yet. They're in the process of learning, and they're all at varying levels. So I have some students, I would never know they're sheltered. They are in honors classes, other classes they're in honors, but they're still in these classes to learn English. And then on top of that, I have some students that don't even speak English. They don't even communicate with me. They have a translator with them. So I had a very, very varying class. Most of them were all 9th graders. There's 4 of them who identified as 9th grade, but they had credits of 10th graders. There was one 12th grade student, he failed the class before. And the school I teach at is located in South Central. It's a low-income area with a lot of crime and violence. There were 2 things I wanted to use in my test. First, I had 4 assessments. The first assessment was when I asked a question with words only, and I say text on my images. The question was text, the answer had to be text by the students. Then there was one where I asked a question in text. They had to give me a picture to explain their answer. Then there's a visual question where I gave them some sort of graph chart, and then they had to explain it in words. And finally, a visual question, and they had to answer with a visual to show me that they understood. Finally, they took a survey where I asked them, do you enjoy assessments with words only, or do you enjoy them with visuals? Do you do well on assessments, and if so, which kind? The kind with words, the kinds with visuals? After the assessments, I compared the differences with the t-test. I got the p-value surveys, I did a correlation, basically to find pattern. Was there any patterns in the answers? That's what this means. And how strong were the patterns? And here are the results. Students scored way higher when it was text only. Any of the visuals, they did not score well on those. When I initially thought this was okay, but it's still 50%, that's an F. So the average was an F. So even though this looks like, oh, that's not so bad, it still is an F. This is passing. The class mean was a C, 0.7%. I originally tested my standard class versus my English learners separately. The crazy part is there was no difference between the standard English learners and the sheltered class. So all my statistics are, that I'm going to show you on the next slide, have to do with these yellow columns. There was no significance between the 2 classes, which I think that's kind of interesting, but it wasn't part of my study, so I'm not really going to go into that. So anyways, this is for math people. Basically, if I... the numbers just mean that these are important. Like, this actually means something. The only one that really wasn't different was text, question, visual answer, and visual answer, text, question. Sorry, I'm getting that. Basically, these 2 are not significantly different. Everything else is different. Like, the difference between this and that is significant, this and that, this and that. So anyways, but I already talked about this. The standard and the EO classes did not have a difference, so I got rid of that data. I sat there trying to plug it all in, and there was no difference, which I think is interesting. The survey, there's a lot of questions on the survey. I just put the ones that were significant up here. Students who like assessments also like assessment with written words. Some of the people who liked assessment with written words also said that they do well. They believe that they do well. And that had a really strong correlation. Students who liked assessment with the pictures also do well with those. They think that they do well. And this one's kind of interesting. There's a negative correlation between the students who like the pictures and graphs. They don't like the words. And the students who like the words don't like the pictures and graphs. So there's obviously 2 camps of students, right? Some students do well on assessments. They like pictures. So it's kind of a array of different type of student likes and dislikes. So obviously we see that students score significantly better on text question, text answer assessments than any other type of assessment. I believe that's because they're accustomed to multiple choice type questions where they get to view the answers before they ever think about the question. Also, they're used to finding an exact answer, or they're used to, like in math, there's an exact answer. Or they're used to going and searching for the answer and then writing down what they found directly from the text. They're really good at that, and it's not a bad thing, actually. It's okay, but that doesn't mean that that's the end of how you figure things out. Also, they're not used to forming their own hypothesis or opinions. I know good science teachers, I'm sure all of you already have your students do stuff like this, but a lot of teachers don't give them that opportunity. Also, they're not used to using indirect evidence to find an answer. From my survey, it was interesting to find out that the students kind of know that they do well on assessments with written words. They say they like it, they say they do well on it, which was actually true in the data. So I think that's interesting, that they know themselves, basically. But it's also interesting that the students said that they liked pictures and graphs on the assessments. Even though they didn't do well, they said that they liked it. They were wrong about doing well on it, but I like the positive attitude because obviously in the future we're going to have to do a lot of pictures, graphs, charts. They're going to have to be making their own. So all these visuals are going to be related to these new assessments that they're going to be taking. Even when I was telling my students, because they knew I was doing an experiment, we had to have all the parents sign like a waiver. And they're like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to us? And I was like, it's not going to hurt you. You won't even know it. And this last week I've been practicing, and they all thought, they're like, oh, I bet we did better with the pictures, didn't we? Thinking that they're into that. Anytime we have a lab and we have charts and graphs, they think they're real scientists. And yeah, they're not as good. They're struggling in that area, and it's hard for them. It's hard work. But they like it, and I really like that positive attitude because they're going to have to be doing a lot of it, right? So anyways, I have a little prediction. Because students are unprepared to do well on these types of assessments that have anything to do with indirect evidence, visuals, graphs, they're going to score really poorly the first year we have these new assessments roll out. It doesn't scare me. I predict that that's going to happen because they're just learning how to take the test. Teachers are going to have to learn how to teach well. So that when the students are taking the test, they're not going to panic and they're going to be well prepared. Instead of multiple choice, now the students are going to have to do essay and free response answers. So some limitations to my study. I had a very small sample size. I was hoping to teach all of the same classes here, but they had to switch up in our schedule. Also, I didn't do this multiple times. I only did one assessment one time. It would have been way better if I did more trials. Narrow demographics, there were no white or Asian students or other students in my class, so I think that'd be interesting to get more and see if there's a difference in race, because right now Asians are dominating academics. Maybe these new type of tests will totally throw that off. I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. Also, it was very difficult in figuring out what kind of assessments to use. I had to figure it out myself. I'm not an expert on assessments, but it's really hard to come up with the same level of questions in different styles. Also, how do you make a visual question? How do you make a question out of a picture? That was really difficult to try and wing that. I almost gave up on that, but I tried it out. Anyways, and then obviously there's individual issues with each student. Some students were moving, one girl ran away for a month, she wasn't even in class, stuff like that. In the future, I would like to see a longitudinal study about student data in these assessments. Obviously trends, which students are scoring high and why, what kind of preparation is effective for teachers. This is a totally new type of test. Students are going to have to be prepared, teachers are going to have to be prepared differently. Students are going to have to know new test-taking skills. And effective teaching strategies, that might change based on the new assessments. Maybe there's going to be a different type of teacher, that's the exemplary teacher. And a big thank you to they're here today, and my grandparents, we're going to visit them for Mother's Day soon. My sister has her PhD. She actually helped me a lot with some of the statistics. And my friend and my sister are very supportive. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Norma, you
ideas?
turn the lights down.
Questions? Any ideas you might have? Yes?
So how can you get kids prepared? What are some things that you would try to do?
Basically do practice test question. My LAUSD has, I work for LSD, they already have an assessment written, like a little practice thing. So I looked at theirs and I can be doing that on my unit test, which I'm not really supposed to say what's on your test, but it's the thing, you can click all these buttons saying you agree to never tell anybody what's on these tests. But I can prepare by looking at other examples and using those on my unit. That's my plan, basically. And a lot of the times, I'm sure all these teachers in this class were all great teachers. We already do that kind of stuff. Short answer responses. Not everything should be multiple choice. Labs, post-lab activities, those aren't multiple choice. It's impossible to do that for labs. So I think a lot of us already do it. We don't really think about it, but now we kind of have to think about it intentionally to prepare the students. Yes?
So you focused on adding visuals to your assessments. Did you also add any type of visual components to other assignments when you didn't normally use visuals?
No.
Like to prepare them at all or practice?
I did the same for all my classes. The visuals that I already used, I kept those going. Everything was the same. The assessment was, that was the thing I was testing. So even the text question, text answer, I use visual aids to show them how everything works. It's the assessment that I was working for. Because in the past, they've already done tons of research on visual aids in the learning process. And most people know that it helps some students, it doesn't help others, and there's strengths and weaknesses and all that. But I wanted to see how do they do on the actual test when they're forced to look at a visual. Yes.
Please excuse me if I missed, but I don't know if you talked about the methodology about the instruments. I heard about survey, but anything else was that?
It was 4 assessments. One assessment, I asked them a question in text only, and they had to answer it in text. And then I switched it up. One was text visual, the answer had to be visual. One was, I gave them a picture, they had to explain it in words, and visual. So it was an actual assessment. The survey was just kind of their ideas, but then I actually got their scores from the assessments.
I don't know if you had mentioned it. Do you have a teacher's website, and is that something practical for the demographics of the students in your class?
Most of my students never check the website. I've tried to post homework, I've tried to do all kinds of stuff, and it partly has to do with the demographics. They're low income. A lot of them don't even have computers at home. I heard one student said they had a computer and no internet, so I was just like, I don't even know what to do with that. Play games? I don't know.
Typewriter.
So anyways, I know that's an issue with my students, but then in general, I don't know how others do. A lot of you guys have students that never check the website, or they do check it. They never check it? Oh my gosh. So maybe that'll be a thing in the future to get.
I mean, do you think
more
that that
of the
would
website.
bolster, their ability to do, visual versus text if they were able to access or chose to access
Well, in class, we've
your
got
website?
computers, and that's why I even joined this program, because Dr. Kerr's teaching us all these cool interactive activities on computers, but we do those in class. I don't assign any for homework because I know like 2 kids will do them, and they're too good to waste like that.
Sure.
So I do them in class, and then they can practice like problem solving, basic things at home.
Is the 12th grader passing?
Yes.
He's
He's an English learner, actually. I believe that when he failed, it wasn't because he wasn't trying. He's still has a very strong accent. He doesn't understand a lot that's going on, but he works hard. So that's going to help him. Yes.
The new program starts when?
Well, I think math and English have already been doing the Common Core. NGSS just came out a few months ago. The new science standards just came out. But teachers are supposed to already be implementing it. Every school is different depending on your boss and personal
Is
choice.
it good timing? I don't know if there's a correlation, but it says to me, the gentleman who did the yourself textbooks and that, and then this new way of learning with visuals. Is that like a good time for that?
Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah. Every teacher is going to do their own thing, whether you do the do-it-yourself textbook or CSCS activities that we've been learning. We've been exposed in this program to all different types of ways to teach. We had demonstrations. We had a whole class where we basically got to do some sort of demonstration. That counts as a visual. That's kind of like a lab assignment. Yeah. So.
One more
One
question.
more? Okay. He's always the last one.
How do you get to be the last question each time? There you go. One last question.
You said you had difficulty with the visual question. Can you give me an example of what a visual question is?
Okay, so what I did was I took a lab. The lab I considered as a visual activity that we did because basically there's a test tube where there's a little thing going on with hydrogen peroxide and liver enzyme. And I drew the picture of the before test tube and labeled it with what's in there. H2O2 is the hydrogen peroxide and liver. They had to show me a picture of what happened afterwards. So they had to draw the picture because oxygen bubbles come out and they had to label it. So you see how it's not 100% visual? They had to label it with words with the oxygen. So that was hard. It's hard to figure out what a student means from a picture. You kind of have to ask them for more, explain a little bit more. So anyways, I felt like that was good enough, but it wasn't perfect.
I do want to say an extra thank you to our three presenters, because in addition to turning in your action research Friday at 11:55 p.m. I know some of you. Actually, I got an email, I'm not going to tell you who, but who turned it in even earlier than that and said, here is all my stuff. It was quite impressive that he did that. Anyway, that you had to, get your presentations ready as well as, turn in your work. I hope that all of you who have heard these presentations know how much work was put in to these projects and why their colleagues said, hey, we want to hear more about it and we want you to present in front of us. And so that's good stuff. And there were other good ones as well. So I want you to know that we got the opportunity to see many good projects. And a good project doesn't necessarily mean that you get the answers like David did. David got wonderful answers and you go, wow, that's so cool. And others, Jennifer gets hers and it's like, well, it wasn't quite what I thought. But there's still something to learn from that. And you have learned so much in the work that you've done as a cohort. And I know I speak for Norm and Brian that we are proud of you. We're proud of you and you have done well. And you will make the next cohort even have to step up a little higher because of the work that you've done, so we appreciate that. So I have your invitations here. There are 7, so take a stack. Norm, is there anything else to tell them? Am I missing anything, Brian?
I just think people did a fantastic job. I congratulate everybody for their projects. This stuff is not classwork. You did real research. These are interesting findings. We need to get this message out. And we hope, I think CSTA is in Long Beach this year. We should see some group go to that and present some of this stuff. Just great work.
Brian throws a great party. He knows how to do that, like get everybody together and go out to eat and maybe drink some iced tea. He's just really good at that. Maybe we'll get some messages in Brian on that.
No, it's just been wonderful working with you folks, and again, just spread the word about the programs and so forth, and again, we hope you can come back to future events and so forth. We have a lot of different projects going on. We have, this summer we have one that's our pre-service institute, pre-service Science Teacher Institute working with Jeff Propulsion Laboratory. We have the CS workshops going on this summer. We have the Project Grad LA. We have a lot of different things going on. So you'll be getting spam from us all the time. You're perfectly on our mailing list, and hopefully, if you can't avail yourself of some of the opportunities, spread the word around among your campuses and so forth. Again, it's been just a tremendous pleasure working with you, and my only regret is that the doctoral hoodie is at the same time, so I wish I could be there to celebrate with you folks.
Norm has been here so long, I just thought I'd point this out, that he's actually, are you teaching like grandkids of somebody?
No.
Okay, just joking. But anyway.
I have an announcement.
Yes, Ms. Courtney?
The party on Wednesday, only 4 people gave me input about where they want to go. Right now, it looks like Yard House is number 1, Northridge Yard House. But I will give you tonight till midnight to input. Does anyone need me to resend the email out?
And Brian and Norm,
Okay,
this
I'll
is
send it out
Wednesday,
again.
at what time, Courtney?
Well, if it's Yard House, if we get there at 5 p.m., there's an hour of happy hour. So
That's what I'm talking about.
5
Yes.
p.m. is what I'm looking before. If it's at Yard House, if it's somewhere else, if I get a lot of input for some other place that I haven't thought of, or no one else has thought of, then maybe we can go somewhere else, but I don't know yet.
Hey,
Right now,
Courtney,
it's
thank you for doing that.
Okay, you're welcome.
And to let you know, and you already know this, but some of you non-class members, Courtney will also be doing our, one of the speeches at our graduation on the 22nd. So again, she volunteered for that, and that was wonderful. So anyway, thank you very much, and thank you to the three again who presented. Okay, get your invitations, please.